Charm is often misunderstood as something light, harmless, or innocent, an effortless quality that some possess while others do not. But Niccolò Machiavelli, the dark genius of power, would have disagreed. To him, charm was never a passive gift. It was a weapon, a deliberate art, an instrument to win loyalty, manipulate perception, and disarm opposition. For Machiavelli, charm was not about pleasing everyone. It was about bending people to your will without them realizing it. To be charming in his sense is not simply to be liked, it is to be dangerously liked. When you master the art of charm as Machiavelli conceived it, you are no longer at the mercy of others' judgments. You become the architect of those judgments. In this video, we will explore 9 Machiavellian lessons on how to become dangerously charming, lessons that will make you not just attractive in a social sense, but powerful in every sphere of life. Number 1. Charm begins with perception, not truth. Machiavelli's cold genius began with one observation. Men do not live by truth, they live by appearances. People claim they want honesty, but in reality they are seduced by illusion. A ruler, he wrote, does not need to actually be virtuous. He only needs to appear virtuous. For power rests not in what is, but in what others believe is. The same principle applies with devastating force to charm. People do not fall in love with the essence of who you are. They fall in love with the image you allow them to see. To become dangerously charming, you must master the stage upon which all human interaction plays out. Every gesture is a signal, every silence a message, every look a calculated brushstroke on the canvas of perception. This is not deceit for its own sake. It is the recognition that reality is irrelevant if others cannot perceive it. The charming individual understands that life is theater, and he is both actor and director. He studies his expressions, tones, and movements with the precision of a craftsman. He knows when to appear bold, when to seem vulnerable, when to give the impression of warmth, and when to cloak himself in mystery. This ability to control perception is more powerful than truth, because it shapes the way others respond. If they believe you are magnetic, confident, trustworthy, or admirable, they will treat you as though you are. And in that treatment, their perception becomes reality. A man may be deeply insecure, but if he appears composed, people will project strength onto him. A man may be calculating, but if he appears generous, people will call him kind. Over time, perception itself reshapes the truth. This is why the dangerously charming man does not waste his energy obsessing over authenticity. Authenticity is a modern idol. People worship it in words, but abandon it in practice. What they truly follow is the appearance of confidence, competence, and charisma. The Machiavellian charmer therefore chooses presentation over raw honesty because he knows presentation governs reality. And once you master appearances, you no longer need to beg for affection or respect. They are freely given because others have already convinced themselves that you deserve them. 2. Charm comes from restraint, not excess. Machiavelli, with his ruthless clarity, understood that eagerness is weakness. The man who tries too hard to be liked reveals himself as needy, and neediness is never admired. It is despised. People instinctively recoil from those who beg for attention, who fill every silence with words, who desperately try to prove their worth. Charm does not thrive in desperation. It thrives in control. And control requires restraint. To be dangerously charming, you must learn to hold back, to appear as though you do not need approval, even when secretly you desire it.
For in restraint there is strength, and strength is what people unconsciously crave. Think of the difference between the man who enters a room loudly, announcing himself, demanding recognition, versus the man who enters quietly, calm, and self-contained. The loud man may draw quick attention, but he also reveals his hunger for validation. The quiet man, however, radiates mystery. People wonder about him, they lean toward him, they project depth onto his silence. Machiavelli would have said that this is the essence of power, not in revealing everything, but in concealing most of it. When you reveal little, others supply the rest with their imagination. They weave stories about your confidence, your experiences, your wisdom, all from the gaps you leave unspoken. And imagination, once ignited, is always stronger than mere facts. Restraint also creates tension. When you say less than you could, when you give less than you might, you create hunger. The human mind cannot tolerate unanswered questions. It will obsess over what remains hidden. This is why mystery captivates far more than constant exposure. Machiavelli knew that rulers who gave too freely lost respect because abundance dulls appreciation. But the ruler who gave sparingly, who appeared difficult to please, inspired greater devotion. The same law governs charm. If you give everything at once, your attention, your approval, your affection, you become ordinary. If you hold back, if you let others chase what is scarce, you become irresistible. To be dangerously charming, then, is to cultivate the art of controlled scarcity. Say less than you could, reveal less than you know, give less than they expect. Let silence do part of the work for you. In that silence, curiosity grows, desire sharpens, and fascination takes root. Excess creates boredom, but restraint creates hunger. And hunger, as Machiavelli understood, is the most powerful force you can awaken in the hearts of others.
Machiavelli advised rulers to give their subjects the impression that he cared deeply about their welfare, even if, behind closed doors, his motives were cold and self-serving. The lesson is clear. Affection is not won by grandeur, but by granting people the feeling that they matter. This is the dark brilliance of charm. It is not about convincing the world of your greatness, but about convincing each person of their own. People fall in love not because you are extraordinary, but because you make them feel extraordinary. To master this is to wield one of the most dangerous weapons of influence, for you are feeding the most universal hunger in human nature, the desire to feel valued. Think of the way a skilled manipulator operates in conversation. He asks a question, then waits, drawing out the other person's story. He listens with intensity, as though no one else in the world exists at that moment. He mirrors their emotions, nods at their pain, amplifies their victories. And all the while, he reveals very little of himself. The other leaves the conversation glowing, convinced they have been in the presence of someone magnetic. Yet, what truly happened? They spoke about themselves, and the charming man gave them the priceless illusion of significance. This is why weaponized listening is more powerful than eloquence. Words fade, but the memory of feeling important lingers. To become dangerously charming, then, you must master the art of listening as a performance. Make others the subject, not yourself. Ask questions that touch their ambitions and wounds. Reflect their emotions back to them with subtle gestures and carefully chosen words. In doing so, you do not merely win attention, you capture devotion. For in the theater of human interaction, the one who listens most deeply holds the strongest power of all. 4. Charm lives in contrast, not constancy. Machiavelli warned rulers never to be predictable. When people know exactly what to expect from you, their fascination with you fades.
Predictability breeds indifference. Contrast breeds intrigue. The same is true of charm. A man who is always cheerful becomes boring. A man who is always serious becomes heavy. But the man who knows how to shift between light and dark, warmth and coolness, generosity and distance, he captivates. People cannot quite pin him down, and in that uncertainty, they remain engaged. Consider how this principle works in human attraction. If you are endlessly available, always agreeable, constantly flattering, you drown others in excess, and they grow numb to you. But if you balance warmth with restraint, giving affection one moment, pulling it back the next, you create a rhythm that keeps people invested. They lean in when you pull away. They chase when you step back. This is not cruelty, it is strategy. Machiavelli would say that power lies not in being consistent in your behavior, but in knowing when to shift, when to surprise, when to inject contrast into your dealings. It is the sharp turn, the unexpected pause that keeps others on edge and deeply attentive. This is why truly charming individuals are rarely one-dimensional. They can make you laugh, and then in the next moment they can make you think. They can be playful, then suddenly serious. They reveal glimpses of tenderness, then retreat into composure. Each change deepens their presence, making them seem larger than life, impossible to fully grasp. Machiavelli understood that people admire mystery because it forces them to pay attention, to keep guessing, to keep desiring. And mystery is born out of contrast, not uniformity.
To be dangerously charming, then, you must resist the temptation to be endlessly predictable. Do not always give, do not always reveal, do not always please. Balance light with shadow. Offer joy, then gravity. Give attention, then take space. This shifting dynamic is what makes people addicted to your presence. They never feel they have fully grasped you, and so they continue to pursue you. Constancy dulls desire, but contrast sharpens it into hunger, and hunger, as Machiavelli taught, is the foundation of loyalty, passion, and power. 5. Charm exploits vanity, not virtue. Machiavelli never flattered mankind with illusions of selflessness. He insisted that people are motivated far more by self-interest than by noble ideals. They crave recognition, admiration, and validation. And if you wish to be dangerously charming, you must learn to feed this vanity, not with grand gestures, but with subtle affirmations that make people feel special in your presence. Charm does not consist in boasting of your greatness. It consists in reflecting the greatness that others wish to see in themselves. Think of how rulers secured loyalty in Machiavelli's world. They gave honors, titles, and small privileges, not because they truly valued their subjects, but because these tokens inflated their sense of importance. People who believed they were elevated became loyal servants to the one who elevated them. The same principle applies in social interaction. If you can make someone feel intelligent, attractive, witty, or capable when they are with you, they will crave your presence, for you have tied their self-image to your approval. This is not about honesty, it is about effect. Machiavelli taught that the appearance of virtue was often more valuable than virtue itself. In the same way, the appearance of admiration is often more powerful than genuine affection. The dangerously charming man therefore studies vanity like a weapon. He listens for insecurities and counteracts them with well-placed compliments. He senses ambition and fuels it with encouragement. He sees pride and strokes it carefully, never too much, never too little. He makes others feel larger in his company than they feel elsewhere. And the secret is this: people never truly love you. They love themselves in the reflection you provide. If you can make that reflection shine, they will attach to you with a force that logic cannot break. To be dangerously charming, then, you must resist the naive temptation to impress through virtue alone. Virtue may win respect, but vanity wins hearts. Do not simply show people how admirable you are. Show them how admirable they are,
and they will tie their admiration to you forever. Charm, when stripped to its core, is the art of making others feel extraordinary. And when you master this, you will hold their loyalty more securely than any honest virtue ever could. 6. Charm thrives on timing, not frequency. Machiavelli warned rulers that generosity, when given too often, loses its value. What is constant becomes invisible, and what is abundant becomes cheap. The same principle applies to charm. It is not the constant presence of attention that captivates, but the precise timing of it. The dangerously charming man does not flood others with affection, praise, or attention. Instead, he gives it sparingly, and at the exact moment it will have the greatest impact.
Think of a ruler who rarely leaves his palace. When he finally appears before the people, they erupt in admiration, as though a god had descended. The scarcity of his presence magnifies its power. But if he were seen daily, wandering the streets, his aura would collapse into familiarity. Charm operates the same way. If you are always available, always attentive, always eager, you become background noise. But if you withdraw strategically and then reappear with perfect timing, offering a smile, a compliment, a gesture when it is least expected, you strike with unforgettable force. This principle is why the dangerously charming individual never reveals himself fully, never gives himself entirely. He understands that anticipation is more intoxicating than possession. People value what they must wait for. They crave what appears scarce. Machiavelli would say that fortune smiles not on those who spend recklessly, but on those who spend wisely. And your charm, like gold, must be spent with calculation. To lavish it constantly is to bankrupt its value. To dispense it carefully is to multiply its effect. To be dangerously charming, then, you must learn the rhythm of presence and absence, of silence and speech, of distance and closeness. Let others hunger for your attention by withholding it. Let them wait for your words by holding your tongue. And when the moment comes, deliver precisely what they longed for, no more, no less. In this way, you condition others to crave your approval, for it arrives like rare treasure, never predictable, always powerful. Charm is not about how often you give. It is about when you give. And those who master timing hold others in a state of perpetual desire. 7. Charm disarms through strategic vulnerability. Machiavelli understood that power is never purely about force. It is about perception, influence, and the subtle art of disarming those around you. The dangerously charming man knows that revealing just enough vulnerability can be more persuasive than constant confidence. People are naturally wary of those who appear invulnerable, unshakable, or untouchable. They admire them, yes, but admiration alone does not breed attachment. To truly captivate, you must occasionally allow others to see cracks in your armor, carefully revealing the human behind the facade. Strategic vulnerability is not about weakness. It is about calculation. By showing a hint of humility, a fleeting insecurity, or a small flaw, you invite trust and empathy. People lean toward you because you appear relatable, approachable, and genuine. Yet the depth of your power remains intact. Machiavelli advised rulers to mix severity with mercy, cruelty with compassion. Similarly, charm thrives in the interplay of strength and vulnerability. The person who seems entirely perfect becomes distant and unrelatable. The person who is perfectly human in measured doses becomes magnetic, irresistible, and ultimately influential. Think of the subtle mechanics at work. You share a minor struggle, a private doubt, or a fleeting moment of hesitation, and suddenly people feel they know you intimately. They feel their guard lower. They feel a connection they did not earn by logic, but by perception. And once that connection forms, your influence deepens, because people respond more readily to those they believe they understand and believe they are helping.
The dangerously charming man wields vulnerability as a tool, a means to soften resistance, to build rapport, and to make others complicit in his presence.
To be dangerously charming, then, you must learn to expose yourself carefully. Reveal just enough to disarm, not enough to harm. Show your humanity in calculated moments so that others feel both protective of and drawn to you. In this way, charm becomes a subtle weapon, one that disarms the mind while captivating the heart. Vulnerability, when mastered, does not weaken you. It makes you unforgettable, desirable, and quietly irresistible. 8. Charm builds power through consistency. Machiavelli valued rulers who were steadfast because predictability in principle creates trust, even amid unpredictability in circumstance. Charm, too, reaches its peak not through random acts or sporadic displays of attention, but through consistent patterns that others can rely on. The dangerously charming man is reliable in the ways that matter most. He keeps his word, honors subtle commitments, and behaves in ways that signal stability and integrity. This is not dull monotony. This is the deliberate cultivation of dependability, a trait rare enough to inspire fascination and respect. Consistency breeds attachment. People do not merely like those who act unpredictably. They cling to those whose behavior reassures them. When someone is consistently engaging, attentive, and deliberate, others begin to organize their expectations around him. They adjust their lives, subtly or overtly, to align with his presence. Machiavelli taught that rulers maintain influence by cultivating a reputation for reliability. The same applies to charm. By consistently demonstrating careful attention, measured generosity, and strategic empathy, you become a fixed point in the shifting chaos of human interaction. Others begin to seek your presence, craving the stability you embody, even as you remain unpredictably fascinating in your contrasts. The art of consistent charm is also deeply psychological. People remember patterns far longer than isolated moments. One extraordinary act might impress briefly, but a steady rhythm of subtle influence becomes internalized in their perception of you. They begin to trust, anticipate, and desire your attention not out of necessity, but because their minds have learned to rely on your steadiness. Yet Machiavelli would caution, consistency should not become predictability in behavior. Your principles remain constant, but your expressions, gestures, and timing retain variability, creating the delicate balance between dependability and intrigue. To be dangerously charming, then, cultivate patterns that reinforce your presence and reliability, but never at the cost of excitement. Make your influence a steady pulse in the lives of others, a constant they can rely on, while retaining enough subtle variation to keep them engaged. When consistency meets calculated unpredictability, charm transforms from mere attraction into influence, and influence transforms into power. 9. Charm, at its pinnacle, becomes influence. Machiavelli's ultimate insight into human behavior is stark but unavoidable. Power is rarely taken by force. It is granted, often unconsciously, by those who believe they are acting freely. Charm is the gateway to this power. When wielded correctly, charm does not merely make you admired or liked. It makes others complicit in your influence, even while they imagine they are acting of their own volition. The dangerously charming man understands that the true apex of attraction is the transformation of affection into obedience, admiration into loyalty, and attention into devotion. This transformation begins with perception and restraint, continues through listening, contrast, timing, and strategic vulnerability, and is solidified through consistency. Each of these elements primes others to respond to you in ways that serve your goals, whether social, professional, or personal. Charm is not casual. It is deliberate, a carefully orchestrated interplay between giving and withholding, revealing and concealing, connecting and commanding. The Machiavellian charmer operates like a master strategist. Every word, every gesture, every pause is chosen to shape perception, manipulate desire, and ultimately guide behavior. The dangerously charming individual becomes a subtle architect of reality. People begin to internalize his influence, adjusting their choices, beliefs, and actions to align with his presence, often without conscious awareness. They remember how he makes them feel, seen, important, understood, admired, and they associate those feelings with him alone. And once this bond forms, the charm is no longer a social skill. It is a lever of influence, a quiet power that can open doors, sway opinions, and shift loyalties without overt force. Machiavelli understood that rulers who mastered perception and influence could command entire nations without raising a sword. Likewise, the dangerously charming person commands attention, devotion, and trust with subtlety that feels effortless to the untrained eye, but is meticulously calculated. To reach this level, charm must evolve from mere attractiveness into a disciplined practice of psychological influence. You must cultivate presence, refine timing, control perception, and shape emotions, not for mere flattery, but for strategic effect. In mastering these elements, you ascend beyond simple admiration. You become a figure whose presence shapes the environment, whose influence extends beyond words, and whose charm quietly bends others toward your will. This is the dark genius of Machiavelli's vision. Charm is not harmless. It is a sophisticated instrument of power, and when wielded wisely, it is unstoppable. Machiavelli's dark genius teaches us that charm is not about being nice, harmless, or endlessly agreeable. It is about deliberately crafting an aura that bends perception, manipulates emotion, and secures loyalty. To be dangerously charming is to understand that people are drawn not to truth, but to illusion, not to weakness, but to strength disguised as softness. And if you can master these lessons, you will find that charm becomes more than attraction. It becomes influence, control, and power. So ask yourself today, are you merely liked, or are you dangerously liked? Are you content to be pleasant, or are you willing to wield charm as a weapon? For those who dare to learn from Machiavelli, charm is not just a social trick. It is the subtle art of ruling hearts, and through hearts, ruling the world. If you found these lessons valuable, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into Machiavelli's strategies and the timeless psychology of power.